Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrea Lidiaser from the Health Promotion Bureau of the Department of Health to guide you through today's health event entitled Violence and Injury Prevention, a Shared Responsibility. Today marks a momentous occasion as we will be formally launching the partnership between the Department of Health, Health Promotion Bureau, and Consuelo Zubel Alger Foundation for the joint implementation of health promotion and violence and injury prevention initiatives. To help us better understand the importance and timeliness of these initiatives, we have invited a resource speaker who will discuss the current situation of gender-based violence and violence against women and children amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. We will also have panelists from the health sector and the civil society share how they are addressing the different forms of violence and abuse against vulnerable populations. This panel discussion will be followed by a brief overview of our partnership, an open forum, and lastly, the virtual signing of the Memorandum of Undertaking. Before we start with our program, may we invite everyone to comply with these simple house rules. Kindly rename yourselves in our meeting with your name and your agency or media outfit to be acknowledged accordingly later in our open forum. Second, kindly put your audio on mute during the presentations and panel discussion. Kindly also input your questions in our Zoom chat box or our comment section in our DOH Facebook page, Healthy Pilipinas page, and our DOH YouTube account. We'll collate your questions for a short open forum later. And lastly, kindly stay up to the last portion of our event for the virtual photo opportunity. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. Dr. Bernadette J. Madrid is the Director of the Child Protection Unit, or the CPU, of the UP Philippine General Hospital, where she is concurrently Associate Clinical Professor of Pediatrics. She's the Executive Director of the Child Protection Network Foundation, Incorporated, which supports the training of child protection professionals and the development of women and child protection units in the Philippines. She is a member of several government committees on health, social welfare, law enforcement, and the judiciary, and is consistently invited to be a resource person for congressional and Senate hearings on laws affecting women and children. Dr. Madrid has several published papers on child abuse and neglect, which have led to changes in Philippine policy and practice. She has worked with different international agencies such as UNICEF, WHO, UNESCO, and UNFPA, and has engineered changes in the medical, legal, and social welfare paradigm on women and children protection in the Philippines that has led to her being the recipient of several national awards. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Madrid. Ma'am, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Andrea. And if I will share my screen. Yeah. Okay. So my lecture for this afternoon will be on the unsafe house, protecting the child from abuse during quarantine. And the objectives will be to discuss whether there is a true increase in child abuse during this pandemic, the important issues concerning protection of children in the home during the pandemic, to describe what is being done in response to these issues to protect children in our country, and to advocate for prevention and early intervention in cases of violence against women and children. Unfortunately, the national baseline study on violence against children showed that the prevalence is very high, with 66.3% of Filipino children experiencing physical violence, 59.2% psychological violence, and 17.1% sexual violence. Most of this violence, whether it's physical violence or sexual violence, happen in the home more than in any other setting. And the same study showed that disasters, and the Philippines is number 3 in the World Risk Index of disaster-prone countries, show that disasters increased violence threefold. So we expect that during this pandemic, there will be an increase in the number of cases of children and women experiencing abuse. In India, for example, in the first 11 days of their lockdown, the government's helpline received more than 92,000 SOS calls in 11 days, asking for protection from abuse and violence. Similar reports from other countries then made UN Chief Antonio Guterres to call for measures to address this horrifying global surge in domestic violence directed towards women and girls linked to lockdowns imposed by governments responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. But when we look at our data in the Philippines, instead of an increase, what we saw was a precipitous drop in the number of reports. This is data from the Women and Children Protection Units during the first months of the lockdown, which slowly increased when the lockdown eased, but still not back to normal. The same data is shown by the data from the Philippine National Police. Now, a drop in reports does not mean that there is decreased incidence. We must remember that in the beginning of the pandemic, resources and manpower shifted in responding to COVID. Some WCPUs were closed or services were disrupted. Some WCPU doctors and nurses were reassigned to COVID wards. Some social welfare offices and barangays were not accepting reports. And the usual helping professionals were busy doing other things, like social workers were busy with the SAP or the Ayuda, and no home visits were allowed because of the protocols, the public health protocols against COVID. Schools were closed until now, and teachers were not physically in contact with the students. In the ECQ, there was no transportation. And people were also afraid to go to the hospital for fear of getting COVID. Worse, the perpetrators were at home with the victims, preventing them from seeking help. If we look at this summary of reports from Bantay Bata, we see that there's a certain trend. We see these increased reports on physical abuse and reports of unmanageable children. Actually, this is not really surprising because during the lockdown, all of them, the parents and the children, were all locked down together in a small space, plus suffering from all the stresses of the long quarantine. In fact, children are still quarantined up to now, with the stress also of online learning. It's not really surprising that we see this data. In the US, the numbers were also down in terms of reports. But what they were seeing was that more children were coming into the ER with more severe injuries that require hospitalization. In the UK, there was a 1,493% increase in the number of patients presenting with suspected abusive head trauma during the lockdown phase. We should actually be seeing the same scenario in the Philippines. A study that we did publish in Pediatrics in 2010 showed that more Filipino parents self-reported shaking of children under 2 years of age, more than even the United States, 19% versus 2.6%. However, we are not recognizing abusive head trauma when they present in the hospital. Just last April, this came out in the news. A 1.5-year-old boy was beaten by his mother for crying loudly and possibly waking up his 6-month-old sibling. This was not the first time this happened. The child was seen at the barangay healthcare center several times with bruises, and a few months before, he was brought to the center when he became unconscious after being beaten by his mother, but nothing was done. No report was made. Autopsy revealed multiple bruises with death probably due to blunt abdominal trauma. Why is it important to recognize physical abuse? The risk of repeat injury is as high as 30 to 50%. Child abuse is the third leading cause of death in children between 1 and 4 years of age, and almost 20% of child homicide victims have contact with a healthcare professional within a month of their death. The mother is a teenager herself. She's just 18 years old and already with 3 children. The youngest is a 6-month-old baby. We can surmise that she probably became pregnant with her first child at 15 years of age, if not younger. She may have been a victim of sexual abuse herself. The chief of police had this to say about the mother. Maganda naman siyang kausap, magaling sumagot, ang inaano lang niya may pinagdadaanan dahil wala siyang trabaho at ganito pa ang nangyari, pandemic. Naaaburido siya lagi. The mother must have had already mental health problems even before the pandemic. But we also know that the pandemic itself and the long quarantine brought its own set of psychosocial problems, including unemployment, insecurity, uncertainty, hunger, anger, plus loneliness and isolation. You know, all of this, one on top of the other, was probably too much for this mother to take, and she could not take care of her own children. Another worrisome report is the increase in online child sexual abuse. The DOJ last year said that reports of online sexual exploitation of children increased by 264%. Just last month, PCIJ came out with this report. Filipino mothers selling their children for online sexual abuse. Online sexual exploitation of children, or OSEC, surged during the pandemic when many Filipinos lost their jobs. Tech companies reported more than 1.29 million images and videos of child abuse materials produced in the country in 2020, triple the number in 2019. In fact, the UN labels the Philippines as the global epicenter for live stream sexual abuse trade. We are so infamous for live streaming of OSEC. There are also other online risks aside from OSEC, and that includes accessing pornography, games with gambling-like elements, cyberbullying, and so forth. Another thing that we're seeing is that suicide behavior is higher among abused youth during COVID. At the PGH CPU, every day we see abused youth that need to be referred to the ER because of suicide attempts or dangerous suicide adjacent. The numbers that we're seeing of this suicide behavior is really so much more than what we have ever seen before. There are several government actions in response to all of this, promoting child protection. Although we must comment that I'm sure in the beginning, the government didn't feel that child protection was essential in the response to COVID. But I think now they have realized that abuse of women and children have become the collateral damage of the response to COVID, like the lockdowns. Some of the government response may not be directly for child protection or women protection, but they are still essential in terms of whether it's a response to COVID or child protection. They're still essential for families like the Ayuda or the Social Amelioration Program, because we know that with the high unemployment, the hunger, and all of these uncertainties that going on, these are all really high risk factors for child abuse. The Department of Health, recognizing that women and children protection is an essential program in the response to the pandemic, approved the costed implementation plan of the DOH Women and Children Protection Program. And DILG activated the PAUSI desks in the barangay, and a lot of cities banned alcohol during the lockdown, which is good because in other countries, increased consumption of alcohol during this pandemic has led to an increase in violence. DepEd boosted its child protection policy for online learning and adjusted its reporting mechanism to respond to possible cases of child abuse at home. It has recently established a child protection unit within DepEd. DOJ and the Supreme Court now has online filing of cases and accepts online testimony of witnesses, which is also increasing access for these abused women and children. Even before the pandemic, we already knew that there were programs and strategies that have been shown to work to prevent abuse of children. And INSPIRE is the acronym that encapsulates all of these different programs which has been shown to work. Like I is implementation and enforcement of laws, N is norms and values, S is safe environments, P is parent and caregiver support, I is income and economic strengthening, R is response and support services, and E is education and life skills. Some of these programs have been adapted and tested in the Philippines. In fact, for some of these programs, we are examples for the rest of the world. One of these is Parenting for Lifelong Health, and these different universities and NGOs in partnership with DSWD 4Ps program did the randomized controlled trial of Masayang Pamilya para sa Batang Pilipino, or MAPA for short, which is the PLH adaptation in the Philippines. This RCT showed that overall, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect decreased by 50% with the use of MAPA, with the 4Ps. And there was also less dysfunctional parenting, less child problem behavior intensity, less daily child behavior problems, more daily positive parenting, more parental self-efficacy, and even less intimate partner violence. There was no effect for parent stress and mental health, but there were also no negative effects. Follow-up 1 year later showed still less overall maltreatment. During COVID, an adaptation also had to be made further because of the limitation of face-to-face parenting sessions. So the PLH group came up with these parenting tip sheets in Filipino and 7 other Philippine languages like Hiligaynon, Waray, Bisaya, and so forth. DSWD has now incorporated these tip sheets in the e-family development sessions of the 4Ps program. Research has also shown that combining certain programs like parenting and the conditional cash transfer program have a synergistic effect in terms of decreasing violence. In fact, these have been called the SDG accelerators in terms of them increasing the faster that we reach the goal for for SDG 16, which is 16.2 precisely, which is against violence against children. Another innovation of MAPA is to use social media like Viber, which is now ongoing the trial is ongoing in Valenzuela City. I think that in 2 weeks' time, the trial will be done. And so far, we're seeing good results. There's even better compliance with Viber, with the delivery through Viber. So we're quite excited about the results of this trial because, as I said, the potential is limitless, especially in terms of reach. Even the makers of this say that even barangay health workers can be trained to do this. Another lesson that we learned is that we needed to expand the WCPU services, especially in terms of mental health, to increase access for victims. And so for those who don't know, WCPUs are child and gender-friendly units using a multidisciplinary approach in providing medical, psychological, social, and legal services to women and children survivors of violence. And these are located in hospitals, and WCPUs are established through a partnership between CPN, Department of Health, the local government, and NGO partners like Consuelo. There are now 114 WCPUs in 58 provinces and 10 independent cities, but there are still 23 provinces without a WCPU. And we are accelerating its establishment this year. We want to reach all 23 this year with the help of DOH, especially the regional focal persons of the Women and Children Protection Program. Valenzuela City has a child protection center established in 2017, also with the support of Consuelo Alger Foundation, and Valenzuela is fully supporting all the personnel full-time based here in the center. We have doctors, social workers, nurses, psychologists, police. Part also of increasing access is the use of helplines. So for example, for PGH-CPU, child abuse is included in the COVID hotline of PGH. It's also good to sort of like hide it within the COVID hotline because we don't want the perpetrators to know when the victims are accessing help. Because remember, they're also right there at home. We are now expanding this helpline so that all WCPUs will have their own helplines. We're starting with 60 WCPUs. This is a project with UNICEF. And we're starting small with just the helpline being an information service on what are the WCPU services and how to access it. But we hope to gradually increase what it can do to include remote case management and to provide psychological first aid. Another adaptation that we had to do for COVID to increase access is to digitize services like telemedicine consultations. And the PGH-CPU is expanding. This is again another project with UNICEF. It's teleconsultation services to 55 barangays in 13 cities in NCR and Cavite. This project capacitates barangays to deliver services for victims and survivors right there in the community. And they are, the telemedicine is from PGHCPU, or teleconsultation, because it's not just medical, it also includes social, psychological, and legal services, is provided through the computer and internet. We are really hoping that then all of these victims will have easier access to our services, knowing the experiences that they had in the beginning of the pandemic. We really had to adapt our delivery of services because these services have to be more agile and resilient to be able to respond to all the challenges of not just this pandemic, but even future crises. I'm sure there will be other crises, especially since there's so many disasters in the Philippines. What telemedicine consultation also does is that it also can access to needed specialty consultations not readily available. For example, here, this is in Valenzuela Child Protection Center. They are accessing the services of a child development pediatrician through telemedicine. You could also, we're trying now also to increase access to child psychiatrists because of through telemedicine, because we know the high suicide rates now that their services are sorely needed. And we will be expanding to other WCPUs who will provide the same services. Okay? So Valenzuela, for example, as a model, aside from accessing other specialty services, they themselves will be providing multidisciplinary services through teleconsultation to all of the barangays of Valenzuela. As I said, the other WCPUs will be following this model. We will start with Baguio Gen, Vicente Soto in Cebu, and Southern Philippines in Davao. As you know, Valenzuela is the first pathfinding city to end violence against children in the whole world. And they are a model for the rest of the world, not just for our country. So there's still so much to do, but together we can stop violence against children. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madrid, for that eye-opening presentation on the extent of the impact of COVID-19 on gender-based violence and violence against women and children. Undoubtedly, the COVID-19 pandemic has really put vulnerable individuals at greater risk of experiencing violence at home, and we see the necessity of urgently responding to this public health issue. Now, let's take a deep dive and open the discussion of the topic with our panel. Our first panel reactor is Dr. Beverly Lorraine C. Ho. She's the Concurrent Director for Health Promotion Bureau and Disease Prevention and Control Bureau at the Department of Health, Philippines. Immediately prior, she was Chief of the Research Division of the Health Policy Development and Planning Bureau, where she worked to support health system reform with innovative research grants and development of institutional capacity for policy research. These efforts have significantly contributed to the passage of key legislation on syntaxes, universal health care, and the institutionalization of the health technology assessment process. Her time in PhilHealth saw her providing technical assistance to the governments of the Philippines and Southeast Asia on health financing, maternal and child health, and health impact assessment. She co-founded the Alliance for Improving Health Outcomes, a nonprofit working to promote public health and develop a critical mass of public health professionals. Doc Bev is a fellow of the Maurice Greenberg World Fellows Program at Yale University, the Equity Initiative, and the Atlantic Institute. She holds an MPH in Health Policy and Management from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health as a Fulbright scholar. We also have attorney Carmela Andal Castro, the managing director of Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation, who oversees its comprehensive programs on the protection of children from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Prior to her work with CF, she led the Manila office of the International Justice Mission, where they rescued victims of human trafficking and child sexual abuse, prosecuted cases against their perpetrators, and delivered intervention programs for their recovery. Attorney Mia has developed and delivered capacity building programs on victim sensitivity, women and children's rights, and basic criminal procedure to law enforcers and social workers, NGOs, public prosecutors, and community leaders. In 2010, Attorney Mia was recognized by the Philippine National Police for her contribution in the enhancement of the investigative capability of anti-trafficking with law enforcers. In 2016, she was one of the Outstanding Young Men and Women Awards for her contribution in the field of law and child protection. She is passionate about working with organizations and government institutions and supporting one another in order to make the country a safer place for all children. Let's start our panel discussion by focusing on the roles of the health sector in violence prevention. Dr. Bev, would you like to give us some of your insights on these?
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to all of you who have tuned in to join us in this session today. First of all, thank you, Dr. Bernie, for such an enlightening presentation. While a lot of the data are truly heartbreaking, it is a very concrete reminder for us that the work doesn't stop with the pandemic, and if indeed it actually signals a bigger call and bigger responsibility for all of us to act on this. As you have comprehensively presented, Ma'am Bernie, we know that the COVID-19 situation has not only surfaced limitations in health system capacity. No, it didn't happen overnight. Say lack of health workers, infrastructure, etc. But I guess all the more important are the other dimensions of health and well-being that were oftentimes not highlighted even before the pandemic. And so gender violence is one very big part of it, including violence against women and children. So, but with the spike in the reported and also unreported cases, as mentioned in the presentation, I guess it's very, very clear to all of us, especially to us here in the Department of Health, that violence prevention is something that we have to take seriously, especially knowing that the perpetrators or the victims themselves are actually suffering in their own homes. We don't want Filipinos to be COVID victims, but more importantly, we also don't want them to be victims in their own homes. No? So we want to encourage a safe stay at home. So for the longest time, the health sector has generally focused on the medical side of things. And that's also what many people, when you talk about the health sector, yun po yung naalala, no? So clinics yan, hospital yan, no? But the reality is 80% of the health happens outside of clinics and hospitals. And dito nga, in this issue, kitang-kita natin that a big part of that health happens at home, no? So the good news is that UHC law, which was signed in 2019 prior to the pandemic, which provides the long-term framework on how the health sector will act, already takes this into account. No? So ano po yung part na yon? Actually, apart from the reforms in clinics and paying for services in hospitals, in referral networks, the UHC law explicitly put out a concrete provision on strengthening of health promotion mandates of the DOH. And yun po yung dahilan kung bakit kami nandito, no, with si Doc Migo, Doc Fonzie, Andrea, and Armon from our team, particularly in the Health Promotion Bureau. We are here because the law established or expanded our office in order to take this matter into hand, no? And basically, dun po sa UHC law, sinasabi po that where people live, work, go to school, or play, no, those are the areas kung saan lumalagi yung mga tao ng mas matagal. We have to aim to make them health promoting. It means it shouldn't take an effort or make it very easy for people to live healthy lives. So in this case, make it easy for the mother and the baby or the women and the child to have a good life at home. And that would syempre include a lot of the work of the various sectors, hindi lang po health. So violence and injury prevention is actually one of the 7 priority areas in our health promotion framework strategy. So looking forward, you will expect a lot more concrete initiatives and partnerships coming from the DOH along these lines, no? Because this is part of our 7 priority areas. So in order for us to do this, it's not just communication that we need to do. We will be, as Doc Bernie, no, has been working on her entire life, really push for healthy public policies and champion these, consolidate or trigger community action. We can't do it from the national level alone. Work has to be done at the community level. We have to constantly assist in creating safer and healthier environments. And finally, we need to capacitate stakeholders, no? Iba-ibang stakeholders. Showing you kanina, si ma'am, nag-advocate siya among policymakers or decision makers, diba? And the action has been fruitful, no? A different kind of capacity building also needs to happen for our health workers or social workers on the ground, and different also for maybe our school teachers, etc. No? So it's all the environment, and that would include the people that the victims or the patients interact with. Everyone has to be capacitated. So finally, kami po sa DOH, lagi po namin sinasabi, no, the health system is devolved and our role, particularly in health promotion, spans many sectors. So it will be impossible for us to do this alone. And that's why we're very, very much open to strategic partnerships like the one we will be having formally or starting formally this afternoon. We know that our role as government is to advocate for policies that will promote the right to health of every individual, child to adult, but also is to give platforms, no? Open up the platform for many of our stakeholders to actually work together, academe researchers, civil society organizations, and budget permitting, no, be able to finance cost-effective or really high yield types of intervention in order to fulfill our mandate. So yun lang, finally, yung last point lang that I want to make is really that our principle in all of the work that we do is community involvement. No? It's never going to work, and we know that from experience if it's always top down. No? And so we really do appreciate having partners on the ground who will help work on the issues, implement things on the ground alongside the beneficiaries of these initiatives themselves. So yun lang po. Thank you very much for this afternoon. Back to you, Andrea.
Thank you so much for guiding us through the role and opportunities of the health sector in pushing forward the initiatives in preventing and eliminating various forms of violence and injury. These are very relevant insights po na, especially as we're still in the middle of the pandemic and we're finding healthy solutions to be able to continue and even improve our health programs and services. To elaborate on the role of non-government organizations, on the other hand, specifically that of Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation, may I call on Attorney Carmela Andal Castro to introduce the Consuelo Foundation and to give her message of support as well for the partnership. Attorney Mia, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Andrea. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Bia. Gaya nga po ng sabi nating DOH friends, I'm with the Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation. Sobrang naggagalak po kami today for this partnership. Parang siguro pa mukhang simple lang na partnership na ganito, pero actually it means so much to us. Kami po ay isang private na foundation founded by our benefactress and founder, Doña Consuelo Zibel Aldrich de Ayala. So, matagal na po kami, more than 30 years. And for the past years, we've been working with numerous NGOs, institutions, local and government institutions to prevent child abuse, neglect, and exploitation, and to intervene on behalf of victims and survivors. And through the years, as we were working, nag-umpisa po kasi kami, karamihan mga NGO shelters, residential care centers na tumutulong sa mga batang na abuso. Later on, lumawak ng lumawak sa ibang parte ng bansa, including a lot of community-based prevention programs. And we realized kasi na sa NGO sector, kahit na babad kami sa community, nakikita talaga namin kung ano yung sitwasyon, ano yung mga napagdadaanan ng mga bata, ng mga community, ng mga duty bearers. Hindi talaga namin magagawa yung kahit pagsama-samahin pa lahat ng mga NGO, malaki man, maliit, global, or local. Hindi talaga magagawa yun without partnership with government. And that's why tuwang-tuwa po kami through the years, dumadami rin po yung mga aming nagiging partners from the government, and it's such a huge privilege for us. So we've worked with institutions like the Supreme Court, the Philippine Judicial Academy in training mga court personnel, paano matutulungan, paano magiging more child sensitive sa mga victims ng abuse. We've been working with the Philippine National Police, yung WCPC, Women and Children's Desk, paano sila mas magiging alerto at alam kung ano yung mga tamang proseso para hindi makadagdag sa trauma ng mga bata. We've also been working with Department of Education, helping them, teachers, mga school administrators, sa mga iba-ibang distrito, kung ano ang magiging proseso pag may mga batang nag-disclose na sila ay naabuso o pag may mga batang pumasok na mukhang nasaktan sa bahay, may mga bruises and all of that. And many others, of course, this DSWD, we've also partnered with them. And iba-iba pong mga government institutions. And so today is really special for me and my team. I have my team here with me. Thank you for getting us here, because I was really excited that the DOH was the one actually who came to us and invited us to work on this, because I actually knew several years ago also natutunan ko yun actually kay Dr. Madrid na yung child abuse na issue, hindi lang yan child welfare, hindi lang yan social welfare na issue, it's a public health issue. At matagal na rin kami ni Dr. Madrid magkasama sa sektor, at nabuksan din yung mata ko noon years ago na oo nga, hindi lang siya pang DSWD. Kasi how can a child thrive? How can a child reach his or her full potential kung meron siyang psychological trauma? For example, dahil sa kanyang pinagdaanan ng sexual abuse, or kung siya ay binubugbog ng kanyang mga kasama sa bahay, di ba? Paano siya magiging healthy? And so this is really part of public health, and sabi nga ni Dr. Bev, kasama to dun sa mga batas natin on the mga universal health ng mga lahat ng Pilipino na kailangan nating ipaglaban at protektahan. So today marks this wonderful opportunity for us to even cast a wider net even. How can we work and reach more communities through the help of DOH through their very good community programs, and also mga partners nila kagaya nila Dr. Madrid. Kami po sa Consuelo, gusto ko lang din i-share, kasi ang bit-bit po namin is yung experience and perspective ng maraming mga NGO that every year we partner with, we support, and we work with. So at any given year, mga around 50 yan na NGOs. And sa ngayon po, alam naman natin, women and children, especially children, are one of the most vulnerable sectors in society. So even on a normal day, there is huge vulnerabilities sa mga bata. Lalong-lalo na pag may mga sakuna, may mga disaster, at lalo na pag mayroong global pandemic that we are undergoing now. So siguro nagtataka kayo, kamusta naman yung mga children sector or yung mga NGO sector? Honestly, it's been very tough for our sector. First of all, the global pandemic, as we know, has caused a lot of economic impact. And sabi nga ng mga NGO partners namin, dati-dati, pag tinatamaan yung Pilipinas ng malaking sakuna, like mga Yolanda, ganyan, datingan lahat ng mga aid, kasi tayo lang yung, hindi naman lahat, buong mundo nagkakaroon ng sabay-sabay na disaster. Marami tayong mga natatanggap, marami mga programa. Pero ngayon, parang for the first time in recent, modern history, na parang talagang everywhere, like the whole world is really going through this. And we are all trying to figure it out. And of course, having our own limitations, talagang limitado yung resources ngayon ng mga NGOs kasi umaasa naman ang mga non-government organizations sa mga donations, no, sa mga iba-ibang mga aid donations, supporters, etc. So we're very lucky in the foundation that our founder benefactors has left us, something that could help others. But still, no, it's been tough as well. And so that's the first, no, that's the first impact. The second impact is of course yung fatigue, no, ng mga staff. Kasi lahat ng mga tao, of course, ay ngayon kailangan mag-pivot. And yung mga people in social development taking care of children, lahat tayo nag-iisip ng paraan paano malilimit yung mga interaction, paano malilimit yung exposure, no, ng mga bata, especially those in mga residential care centers in communities. So it's constant having to figure things out, and at the same time itutuloy pa rin yung yung day-to-day services na kailangan ng mga bata, but at the same time yung mga more complex na nag-arise because of the pandemic as described Dr. Madrid. So in fact, we've been hearing some of those firsthand from our partners, but yung sa iba din naman sa community, actually minsan hindi rin nila alam mismo kasi 'di ba, especially in the case of sexual abuse, 'di ba? Parang yun talaga yung mga it happens very in private situations. So usually totoo yun, bumaba talaga yung mga reporting, especially nung una kasi parang very abnormal pa kahit yung mga institutions, mga law enforcement, parang hindi full parang mga skeletal force, mga ganun. So may impact ho talaga yon. And lastly, parang ang effects sa talaga sa mga sector namin ay yung parang kailangan talagang mag-work harder. Kasi we're all trying to figure this out. We're all trying to gain whatever knowledge we can. But there is a limitation in how we can move. So for example, for me and my team, normally throughout the year, we really travel all throughout the Philippines to visit our partners, to help with their capacity building, to help them establish stronger kung saan kami makaka-support. Pero of course, no, because limitado pa rin yung paggalaw, lahat medyo virtual lang talaga. And ganoon din yon. So sa mga iba naming partners taking care of, let's say, mga children na neglected o kaya may special needs, 'di ba? Dati may kailangan nila ng, let's say, physical therapy, kung meron silang mga disabilities, ganyan. Parang ngayon, mahirap. Parang noong una nag-virtual lang, pero little things like that, no? And malaki talaga yung impact. Pero what does that mean? Hindi naman ibig sabihin, kaya nga nasabi ni Dr. Bev, kahit na ganun, mas lalo pa rin talaga tayong nare-remind at nagiging passionate. Kasi all the more, if the situation is very challenging right now, all the more the children need us to be even more energetic, even more proactive, and even more ahead of all of them and trying to figure all this out, including, no, 'di ba, yung mga mental health, totoo yun. Nasasabi, yung mga data na share ni Dr. Madrid, totoo yun, first hand na validate po namin yun sa aming mga partners, a lot of young people, and not just young people, adults, 'di ba, talagang matindi talaga yung mga mental health struggles sa ngayon. So what is our, what can say, 'di ba, ano yung pwede kong ma-recommend, kung ano yung ginagawa namin. Babalik pa rin ako dun sa tatlong napaka-importanting way that I approach, the role of communities and the nonprofit sector. The first, when it comes to child abuse, taking care of children, first talaga is yung prevention. Napaka-importante na tayo mismo as adults sa communities ay aware sa mga ito. So itong mga ganitong forum, nakakabukas na talaga ng mata. 'Di ba? Parang iniisip natin minsan, ay quarantine na, nabo-bore na ako sa bahay, ganyan. Pero actually, ito pala yung reality. So it really starts with that, especially for us in the NGO sector, like really conferring with one another, exchanging notes, what is happening on the ground, and what is happening even to those children who are not, like crying for help. Like we have to be ahead of that. So tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung aming mga prevention strategies. We have a lot of, let's say, mga child protection, mga materials, mga IEC or information and education materials, sa mga ibang probinsya na medyo pwede nang magkaroon ng mga gathering na mababa yung mga cases of COVID. Medyo nagsisimula na kami doon, as long as open, hiwa-hiwalay. Kasi kailangan pa rin tumuloy eh. Yung mga field workers namin nagsasabi na hindi pwede on pause yun. So unti-unti tinutuloy pa rin. And of course, yung prevention in different ways, gaya ng mga ganito, mga virtual na pamamaraan, sagana po kami ngayon dyan all over our sector. We also, of course, if we want to prevent, we need to understand kung ano ba yung child abuse, ano ba yung bawal, ano yung pamamaraan na hindi maganda sa pag-alaga sa mga bata. What is and child abuse, covers not just physical abuse, not just sexual abuse, but emotional abuse, psychological abuse. Lahat yan ay covered sa ating batas at covered sa ating mga responsibilities as adults to know about. And pangalawa, cannot just prevent, no? Paano kung merong bata sa community, 'di ba, na naabuso or pwedeng online, 'di ba? Hindi naman lang face to face. Kailangan pa rin tuloy-tuloy ang pagresponde. So ngayon, very happy to say a lot of our government institutional partners, all of them, talagang nakapag-pivot na rin, no? Kagaya nga yung nabanggit ni Dr. Madrid. Lahat pwede na rin online filing, pwede na sa police mag-file through online din, mga pagsalaysay and all that. Kasi mukhang tuloy-tuloy pa talaga to. So at least masaya kami doon dahil nagtutulungan lahat at we all learn from one another. So we need to constantly respond. And hindi lang naman ang pagresponde, like kung sinasabi, hindi lang ang pagresponde ay pag-file ng kaso kahit abogada ako. Dahil naniniwala na yun lang ang solusyon. Kasi many times, no, kailangan yung ano muna, of course, yung immediate, kung ano yung mga kailangan itulong sa health ng mga victims of abuse, but also psychological, right? Kailangan talaga matugunan nyo by psychosocial support through our other mga partners in our sector like psychologists, psychiatrists, tulong-tulong social workers. Very, very important. And pangatlo and last but not the least, aside from preventing and responding to these instances and cases, kailangan talaga maging agents of change. Kasi hindi tayo pwedeng mag-stop lang nag-respond tapos na. But for me, no, every time there is a case of child abuse that we hear about, that we, especially if those na experience talaga natin, first hand or sa mga natutulungan natin, talagang kailangan maging agents of change. Huwag nating sasayangin yung ganong knowledge na parang, ganun pala yung noted. Hindi. Kasi kahit sinong magpagsabihan natin, family, di ba, mga kamag-anak or people in our communities especially, mabuksan yung mata, 'di ba, sa mga ganitong pangyayari at maraming pamamaraan na pwede tayong tumulong. For me, malaking bagay 'yon. And it's not limited to professionals na kailangan nasa helping profession like mga registered social worker. Hindi. Kahit sino po, lahat tayo, we can do something by sharing this information, by helping organizations that are serving and protecting victims or those running community programs, and just in our own way, just being agents of change to make this place a safe place, to make this world a safer place for our children, and being there for them, especially during this time that is very, very critical and challenging in all our lives. So yun lang po. And I want to just close by congratulating the Department of Health. Thank you so much kay Dr. Bev at kay Dr. Migo for your very progressive leadership. Like you could have just let those universal healthcare laws, stay there as laws. But no, you came, when you went out of your way to really think of ways to partner with private institutions like us to make it alive. And it's just really our privilege to share whatever we have, whatever experience we have, not just ours but all our networks, to help you and help us reach more people and hopefully protect more children through our work. Yun lang po. Thank you, and I hope we're all staying safe.
Thank you so much for these insights and for the message of support on behalf of the Foundation, Attorney Mia. We greatly appreciate the partnership that we have with the Consuelo Foundation, as you're really at the forefront of the work on the prevention of and treatment of abuse, neglect, and exploitation in the country. To give us more details of the partnership we're celebrating today, may I call on Mr. Armand Argelias, Supervising Health Program Officer from the DOH Health Promotion Bureau, and Ms. Carmela Indoyon, Research and Advocacy Officer of Consuelo Foundation, to further enlighten us on this partnership.
Yes, thank you, Andrea, and maraming salamat po sa mga tagapagsalita natin ngayong hapon, kay Dr. Bernie, of course, for putting into context why we are holding this event today, for grounding our work as why is there a need for a strengthened, mas pinalakas na action laban sa violence in all its forms. Of course, kay Dr. Bev for highlighting the need for the health sector to get more involved in this course, discuss how the Universal Healthcare Act is relevant and how health promotion is very much important of this work. And finally, to Attorney Mia for emphasizing that the collaborative approach is really the way to go, no? If we hope to prevent and respond and to finally eliminate gender-based violence against women, against children, and all persons who are at risk of violence. No? And for this afternoon, with all of these premises, these are actually the reasons why we are solidifying this partnership between Health Promotion Bureau and Consuelo Foundation. Mela?
Thanks, Armand. Of course, this all started with a simple invitation from the DOH to provide inputs in developing the health promotion playbook. But in the process, we realized na may kanya-kanya kaming mga strengths, no? And this is a real opportunity nga to collaborate in several areas of work na equally din naman important in preventing violence and injury, including our ABCDs. So A is to activate communities, meaning we plan to really prepare the partner communities that we're with in the process. B is to build capacity, meaning to really help educate the local implementers so that they can meaningfully participate throughout the partnership process. C is to co-create the health education materials, beginning with the Wanna Be Wais playbook to start and guide the materials development. And of course, D, which is to develop research and advocacy materials to generate data on knowledge, attitudes, and practices related to violence and injury prevention. So saan natin magagamit na yung information na yon? We will use it to inform relevant health policies and of course, programming, not just in DOH, but also in Consuelo moving forward. So all throughout the partnership, Consuelo again will bring its network of 50 service providers, schools, workplaces, and partner communities who are equally committed to promoting health and well-being across the country. So together, DOH and Consuelo will tap on the abundance of good practices in all of these partners in our joint network to move hope into action through the partnership.
Yes, and of course, no, on the DOH side naman po, there's also a space for us to maximize our available resources and reach, no. So as mentioned, violence and injury prevention is a priority for us in Health Promotion Bureau. And we have, of course, our hardworking health promotion officers in all regions and hopefully in all localities to help us in the work. So from the regional offices down to the local levels, to the barangays, and to every Filipino households, no. So including our barangay health workers, our volunteers on the ground, they also have the potential to parang makilahok at matulungan po tayo sa advokasiyang ito. Right now, actually, this is being demonstrated by two of our partner LGUs. So we have Valenzuela City and the province of Zamboanga del Norte who have taken on the challenge of highlighting the role of the local health system and its local partners in violence and injury prevention. And we are hopeful that more LGUs as we go on will be championing this vision as well. No? So with this partnership, we are anticipating an expanded reach of our shared knowledge materials and activities, not just as not just with our local health counterparts, but also with our non-health sector partners, no, which Consuelo, as Mela has mentioned, they are working with other partners as well. So highlighting again Dr. Beb's point a while ago, no, health promotion would not be possible really without strengthening community action and working collaboratively with partners.
Right, Armand. I guess that's also why Consuelo is super excited nga about this partnership. Kasi yung tunay na pagbabago naman really lies beyond either of our organization. So it's really beyond DOH and Consuelo to prevent or respond to violence and injury against women, children, and families. It's really dependent in each one of us, in our homes, in our communities, katulad nga ng nabanggit kanina ng mga panelists natin. So we at Consuelo really bear witness to the power of transformative partnerships on the ground. In the independent program evaluation of our child abuse prevention and intervention network in Negros Oriental, which was completed last year, lumabas nga dun sa study na yung mga na-train natin na doctors sa municipality ng Valencia sa Negros Oriental, sila yung mismo yung nag-mobilize ng mga resources and also mga tao din talaga, other health professionals and non-health professionals to participate in what we call the multidisciplinary team or katulad ng nabanggit ni Doc Bernie ng WCPU.
So it's a gathering of social workers, police, lawyers, and doctors or other medical professionals in managing different child abuse cases. So isa lang to sa mga examples of how this partnership could develop and how really our partners are the lifeblood of our advocacy for violence and injury prevention. And that's why we celebrate this partnership with the DOH kasi it's really not common to do this, and we really hope that through this partnership we will be able to co-develop more champions who will lead in realizing a healthier Pilipinas wherever they meet.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing the experience of Consuelo. No, perhaps this is one of the instances na pwede nating i-explore as HPB and Consuelo in working together, moving forward, and possibly for scaling up. No, that's one of the activities na we can explore to this partnership. And I would agree, no, na importante talaga na mas mapatingkad pa, mas mapatampok pa natin yung prinsipyo ng pakikipag-collaborate and yung pagpapaunlad ng kapasidad ng lahat, no? Kagaya ng nasabi ng speakers natin kanina, hindi lang ng mga responders, ng social workers, health workers, kundi pati yung mga lahat ng individual na potentially at risk of being violence, even their potential perpetrators, they have to be more knowledgeable, more capacitated and engaged really if there's any hope to finally eliminate violence against anyone. No? And I guess this is why we want to solidify this afternoon through our signing of the Memorandum of Undertaking, yung partnership natin between HPB and the Consuelo Foundation. Andrea.
That sounds great. I'm sure these opportunities will really help us push forward talaga the agenda on preventing gender-based violence and violence against women and children. No? And it is indeed a significant milestone in achieving our Healthy Pilipinas vision. We look forward to a fruitful and long-lasting partnership between both our organizations. So for the next parts of our program, I'd like to invite Ms. Krisha Denise Misa, Health Program Officer 2 from the Communications Management Unit. She'll be facilitating our question and answer forum and our virtual signing. Krisha?
Thank you, Andrea, and good afternoon to our participants from Zoom and our live streaming platforms. We gathered your questions for our guest speakers so we can fully grasp the nature of the event. So with this, let's start with a question for Dr. Beverly Ho and Attorney Mia. And the question is, how can the signing of the Memorandum of Undertaking assure the public that there will be a significant impact in the country's pursuit of reducing violence in the country? Perhaps Doc Beverly Ho can answer first, then Attorney Mia.
I think, thank you for the question, Krisha, and to our member of the audience who asked that question. Thank you for challenging us. I guess what we can promise is really that the partnership will hopefully become a catalyst. Oh? We are not saying that with this partnership we will solve everything, but we hope to use the resources that we have in the DOH, and I think the Consuelo Foundation also from their end, our networks, whoever we can match also, no, in order for synergy to happen. And when we talk about synergy, it means 1 + 1 isn't equals to 2, diba? But 1 + 1 equals to 5, no? And through partnerships, that's really what's happening. And syempre, marami din kaming kailangan gawin, no, sa DOH, for which the knowledge might not be residing within us. And that's what Attorney Mia has been saying kanina, diba? Meron silang mga institutional knowledge na pwede nilang ma-share sa amin. So instead of us taking example, no, 3 months to do a certain thing, but because they've already have expertise in it and they're helping us, baka matapos na kami in 2 weeks, no? And it frees up bandwidth, time, effort from all of us within the DOH to do more things, diba? And I guess my last point will really be about participation. At the end of the day, no, we don't want to be doing these initiatives from the outside going in, diba? Alam natin that the problems are within the communities and even within households. And it is to everyone's best interest na talagang tulong-tulong tayo to raise awareness that each one of us can actually do something about this issue. And not just selected groups of organization, pero lahat tayo may pwedeng iambag dito. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'll
Thank you
go
very
right
much.
ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for that answer, Dr. Bev. So, what we highlighted from the answer is that there's a promise of partnership as a catalyst. So it won't really solve everything, but it's actually a start for us to expand the services. And with the expansion of services, may we ask Attorney Mia to actually extend
Sure.
the response.
Yes. Yeah. The problem of violence against children, women, families, it's really upon the entire, all of us in society. So, lahat ng mga sector, lahat ng mga institutions ng government have their own unique roles, and kami din, tayo din sa sa lipunan. So, in our project, we have come up with, our concept, our objectives together, and definitely for this, helping, collaborating on the mga playbook for the healthy Filipinas sa community. Definitely, we will endeavor to come up with specific na mga objective na mga targets. Kasi advocacy to we see this as an advocacy, or a prevention endeavor. So definitely magka-come up kami ng mga quantitative, para na ilan ang gusto natin ma-reach, sino yung mga gusto nating makausap, ma-train, maibaba itong mga materials na dinidevelop tungkol sa pag-protect at pag-prevent ng pang-abuso sa mga bata, at ano yung mga gagawin. So definitely yon, no? Hindi naman siya yung parang sausaw lang dito, sausaw lang noon. Hindi. Talagang we will make sure din, kasi kami din, kahit sa non-profit sector, we learned din through the years na we really have to try to measure, because if we cannot measure it, it's how can you manage it? But at the same time, it's not just on DOH. Like, we have a lot of other institutions that are, let's say, taking care of, for example, sa DSWD, taking care of yung sa survivors, children who are victims of abuse, yung sa mga pagbibigay ng psychosocial or residential care. We have court system that are promoting the seeking justice part and everything. Iba-iba, sa schools, etc. But definitely, itong mga ganitong measures, no, it's really on a national level that we really try to see. And it's a good question. Thanks so much. Kasi it shows that that you cared about what we shared today. And I'm really happy about that. And for, as Doc Bev said, challenging us to make sure we have results.
Thank you so much for that very comprehensive answer. We really see that the Consuelo Foundation is involved in this partnership and with this advocacy. As mentioned by Attorney Mia, we want to highlight that it is crucial and important to reach our targets, kasi doon po natin malalaman kung nagiging inclusive tayo or hindi in terms of our advocacy. So with that, let's move on to the next question. So with the recent controversies and killings involving policemen, how can a child develop trust in police and remove the prejudice that police are part of rule breakers? So perhaps this question is for Attorney Mia and Dr. Bernie. So maybe Attorney Mia can answer first, then Dr. Bernie.
Sure. Thanks for that question. Thanks for your candor. It's true. Nalalaman natin na may mga ganong situation of brutality or abuse of police, not just here in the Philippines, but in all parts of the world. And definitely, we stand against that. Naninindigan tayo against that. Hindi natin yan binabaliwala, for sure. But what I could say as well, in my experience working in the child protection sector, I've met, hindi lahat ng ganyan, hindi lahat ng nababasa sa JAR, hindi ibig sabihin nun, malalahat na natin ang lahat ng mga law enforcement ay ganoon. I've worked with hundreds of mga PNP, men and women from the PNP Women and Children's Protection Center who are talagang who go above and beyond, and I've seen this not just sa mga training video, sa mga actual rescue operations years ago that we've had, kahit wala silang tulog, walang ganyan, napaka-sensitive, talagang concerned, no, at well trained sa mga kung ano yung magiging impact ng isang sitwasyon, lalo na sa mga victims of abuse. So yeah, there is definitely an effect kung may mga ganun. Pero that's why we are working very, very hard in building the capacity of law enforcement. And it's not just law enforcement, like all of us, even a lawyer, even a private lawyer, diba, could actually cause harm to a child if he or she is not sensitive, or he or she, or even an own parent, even me as a mother, diba? I could cause harm to my children if I am not aware and yung parang protective of their rights, or if I debase them, or kung bibigyan ko sila ng mababang self-worth and all that. Lahat tayo pwedeng makaabuso sa mga bata kahit hindi natin anak in many different ways.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you. Yes. Thank you very much for that, Attorney Mia. Yes po, Doc Bernie, you may answer the question.
Yeah. For me, as I said, no, there are always bad eggs in any organization. There are always bad people, and they receive more attention than those who do the good deeds. But specifically, I can say that the experience of children in the Women and Children Protection Units with the police working in these WCPUs, I think goes a long way in changing their perception of the police, because then they see what really a real good police person can do and does every day as part of their work. So I also tell you that we have a lot of patients who were victims of police brutality, who were brought to us. And I think after their experience with the police at our unit, their perception of the police really changed. So I think it's really a matter of us also working and correcting the impression that you generalize that all police are the same. They are not. I could even say that the normal police officer is someone who is a good person, hindi yung nakikita natin sa TV. Because of course, those who get in the news are the ones that who kill or etc. But hindi yan sila majority, minority lang yan. So in short, once they experience the police at the WCPU, then what they think about the police will really change. But we also work, of course, with the police trainings. No, we are part of the curriculum on how they will handle cases involving children. But I should say that those who are really bad police, it's not just because of lack of training. There's something really missing inside them. No, it's not just because of training. So how the police, I just heard Chief PNP saying the steps that they will take in how they will choose their police officers, so that as much as possible hopefully they can weed out the bad eggs from the beginning. So I hope that works also. So thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mia and Dr. Bernie, for those response. We know that this is a sensitive topic, but the responses that you provided really do ring a bell. That not all of the cops are bad and not all are good. So it's really part of us as members of the public sector to actually train ourselves and to be informed on how to recognize what is a good practice and what is a bad practice. So it's also important to highlight what Dr. Bernie said, that we should train our law enforcement officers to handle violence and to help build trust nga. And reiterating din po Attorney Mia's response that we condone any acts of violence that are harmful, of course, to our children and other vulnerable sectors. So with that, let's move on to the last question. So the last question would be for all of our guest speakers. So child labor is also a form of violence. What are your initiatives in protecting and promoting the rights of a child? So perhaps we can, Dr. Bev can provide insights from the DOH side, followed by Attorney Mia and Dr. Bernie.
I guess this initiative is really initiated by the labor sector, and the DOH sits in the recently formed, and I think in 2019, the National Council Against Child Labor. And so far, there's already a strategic plan for 2020 to 2022, admittedly really curtailed by the pandemic. And guess next week, no, magkakaroon ulit ng susunod na meeting wherein the communication plans around raising awareness and improving advocacy around this area of work is going to be discussed and approved. So hopefully that would be one of the more concrete steps moving forward, at least to raise awareness around where the big issues are in this front.
Thank you so much, Dr. Webb. Attorney Mia.
Mm-mm. Yeah, definitely child labor is uh, outlawed. No, it's one of the forms of child abuse. It's covered by Republic Act 9231, an act eliminating the worst forms of child labor. And tama yung sinabi ni Dr. Bev, the Department of Labor and Employment is the agency of the government that is tasked primarily with the monitoring and the prevention and yung mga ganitong to make sure na hindi to lumaganap. But of course, that doesn't mean na wala tayong magagawa. So included po yan sa aming mga orientations. We have, kung gusto niyo po ng copy, we could just message me, message us. We could give you copies of our child protection flip charts. It's basic orientation on the rights of children. We have it in many different dialects. We started it in Filipino and English. And then now in partnership with the Commission on Human Rights, na i-translate po namin sa Ilonggo, Ilocano, Bicolano, at magkakaroon pa for even in indigenous na mga lengguwahe all the way down south sa Mindanao. So nandun po yun, isa po yun sa mga dinidiscuss definitely, and it's something that we are continuing to be vigilant about and also helping resolve.
Yeah. I would like to say that a lot of the child labor have crossed the line to child abuse. No, hindi lang siya child labor. Especially when you look at a lot of it is under child labor could be child sexual exploitation. It could be child trafficking. So so yung child labor na yan, it's really there, no? It's really touches a lot of time na child abuse na siya. And I think that should be recognized by everyone because as I said, we as Filipinos, we love our children, but we have certain expectations of children that are not good also for them. Like we expect children to work for the family survival. And the children do it willingly because they love their families. So it's taking advantage of the child. So I think recognition early on is very important, and prevention, of course, so that it's the parents who will be working and not the children. So what kind of jobs are there available for the parents, and making sure that all children are in school. So if a child is not in school, there must be something wrong, and that should also be investigated. And another thing is we cannot just take away child labor without replacing it with something concrete. Kasi if you don't, maybe something worse will happen to the child, no? So yeah, it's not simple. Again, it's the approach needs many hands on deck from different sectors. Everyone working together for this child, for her full development, no? So I could see multiple sectors involved, from health to education to the labor sector to the business sector, even to ordinary families who probably, when they hire kasambahay, even are they already going into that child labor side? They might not be aware. So I'll stop there, but just to say that definitely it's something that we should pay attention to. And there are millions of children in the Philippines involved in child labor, and even the hazardous kind. I think at least in the last survey, at least 2 million children involved in hazardous child labor.
Thank you for all those responses. We really see the importance of the importance of our children and what happens to them in the environment when they are outside their homes. So it's also good that we have different um outputs and different plans that we can help in preventing the child labor and understanding the circumstances that the children face in our country. So with that, uh, we will end the open forum. So thank you for everyone who provided the questions for our guest speakers. So now we proceed to the heart of the event, the Memorandum of Undertaking signing between the DOH, Health Promotion Bureau, and the Consuelo Foundation. So with that, may we request Dr. Beverly Lorraine Ho and Attorney Carmela Andal Castro to kindly open their cameras so we could capture the virtual signing. So Dr. Beverly and Attorney Mia, you may now sign the Memorandum of Undertaking. Okay. So, yes. So may we request Dr. Beverly and Attorney Mia to kindly show their signed memoranda of undertaking so we could document it po. Yan. Okay, so wait lang po. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, got it po. So, thank you for officiating this partnership, Dr. Beverly Ho and Attorney Mia Andal Castro. This signing is just one step toward our goal of ending gender-based violence and violence against women and children and promoting healthier behaviors in different communities. So now, as part of this event, may we also ask the Health Promotion Bureau team and the Consuelo team who took part in making this event possible to turn on their cameras for a short photo opportunity. So maybe the screen sharing may be stopped so we can get the grid picture. Yes, Doc Bernie can join also with the photo. Yes. Okay, so we'll capture in 3, 2, 1. Okay, got it. So with that, thank you, HPB team and Consuelo team. And for now, of course, we will not leave our participants as they are also part of our in making our event successful. So may we kindly ask our participants to turn on their camera so we can take a picture. So I'll be taking a photo of 2 screens. So yes. Hopefully our participants will turn on their cameras. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with the photo opportunity. So, okay, I'll be starting with the first grid. So 3, ready na po ba? 3, 2, 1. Yan. Okay. So next screen. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, and thank you everyone. Okay, so we're done with the photo opportunity. Thank you everyone for participating in this. And now may I call on Miss Andrea from the DOH HPB to formally close the program.
Thank you, Krisha. As part of the full realization of this endeavor, may we ask our speakers for a final message that they'd like to leave with the audience for this afternoon. We can start with Dr. Madrid, followed by Doc Bev, and lastly, Attorney Mia.
I would just like to thank everyone for this opportunity to share. And I would like to congratulate the Department of Health and Consuelo Foundation on this partnership. I'm sure that we are going to see the fruit of this partnership very soon. And I'm quite excited that this has happened. So congratulations.
Hello?
Doc Bev, go
Okay.
ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much po, Ma'am Bernie, and thank you, Attorney Mia, and all of our colleagues from Consuelo and everyone else who joined us this afternoon. You can expect a lot more updates from the DOH as we roll out the playbooks and all our initiatives together moving forward. And finally, just to really re-emphasize the point that we are not and we cannot be alone in solving this wicked problem as we call it. No? So kailangan namin ng tulong ninyong lahat. And so do let us know and reach out to us and the Health Promo Bureau at hpb@doh.gov.ph if you want to collaborate, you have ideas around this, and we'll be happy to listen to you. Salamat po.
And lastly, Attorney Mia.
Thank you. Ako very short lang. I just want to greet mabuhay po sa ating lahat. Alam ko kakaiba talaga yung pinagdadaanan nating lahat ngayon. But sabi nga nila, pag maraming stress, isa sa mga antidote sa stress ay yung continuity and predictability. And for us in this sector, kahit papano, diba, it just gives me assurance na may mga ganito pa rin, mga magagandang bagong ideas and innovations kagaya ng ganitong partnership at tuloy-tuloy pa rin kagaya ng mga iba-ibang ways that we have to protect children in the current situation. So that brings me a lot of kahit papano comfort. So I just want to greet everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much, Abuay, for being here, especially to our participants kasi hindi to magiging success kung kami-kami lang yung nag-usap dito at walang nakinig sa amin. So the fact na nandito kayo, malaking feeling of meron kaming support at may paniniwala kayo na magiging makabuluhan itong aming ginawang partnership in the weeks and months to come. Thank you and hope everyone is safe.
Thank you very much, po, for those words of encouragement, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. May we all remain to be steadfast in our cause to end violence in all forms. With all of these initiatives, we ensure everyone that this partnership, as well as with the help of other stakeholders, will help us establish a country that is safe for every Filipino and is promotive of healthy behaviors towards a #Healthy Pilipinas. Maraming salamat and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you po.